Stack it up, don't fumble. You just gotta stay humble. You ain't flip it till you make it double. Baby girl, I ain't got time to cuddle. I ain't lying to you, I just had none. They ain't give it, had to take some. I can tell you ain't all of a sudden. What the fuck, thought we came much struggle. But I know I gotta stand for some. I cannot settle for none. If you with me, then I love you. If you ain't, then it's fuck. I can't go out like a buster. Come from a family full of hustlers. I can't go out like a buster.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Family Full of Hustlers podcast, where we don't just talk about money, man. We talk about meaning, and we are here to redefine what hustle culture looks like. All right, I'm your host, Eric Phillips, aka Eric M, and today I want to have a really vulnerable but real conversation with you all. All right, so today's episode is called "Healing is a Wealth Strategy." All right, now, just on the title alone, some of y'all probably already know where I'm going with this, right? But I do feel this is a topic that we need to really go deep on and really acknowledge, because it's kind of an invisible, like a hidden strategy that I feel. All right. So first off, I want to start by saying that when I say that healing is a wealth strategy, it's because some of us, we really not broke because of money. Actually, I would argue most of us probably are not broke because of money, right? We're probably broke because we're still like bleeding from things that we never healed from, and it's trickling into the empires that we are trying to build. We're trying to build big companies. We're trying to be the first of our family to start a business or whatever, and we're building on top of trauma, and we're building from a place of an unhealed mind, and that reflects into our businesses. So, and because of that, we wonder why everything keeps falling apart, right? So let's just get into it. So let's just keep it real, all right? So most black people in America have been born into a system that kind of trains us to survive, and so much so that we don't understand what it's like to be well. And survival mode has fucked up our minds so much that we have a hard time identifying realistic approach to our businesses, because we've been in survival mode so much. And I'll elaborate on that, later on down the line. But we've been kind of programming ourselves only to go after what we want, but we're still struggling with understanding how to protect ourselves in the process. We're still learning how to feel. We're still not there. So we have to kind of like process the transition from survival mode to a healing mind. All right? Because survival mode has been in our families for generations. We didn't really realize it, just because that's just everyday life for us at the time, right? But just from my own experiences, you cannot build anything when your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, right? So like, ask yourself this: do you think that we've normalized like suffering? We tend to say stuff like, I'm good, when we probably not. For a long time, for black people, we treated therapy for a long time like it was only for the white folk, right? Like, this, the concept of getting therapy is a newer thing. Like, this is not like something that's just been embedded in us to go and do, right? So throughout that process, we don't understand how that affects the other aspects of our lives, right? Um, so to put that in perspective, I've been reading a book. Well, I've read a book called The Psychology of Money. I've read this book a million times, probably like 3, 4, 5 times. I don't even know, right? And I've read. I'm an avid reader, so I read a lot of different psychology books or books about money. Right now, I've been reading the Creative Act again by Rick Rubin. So I've always been a person who I crack open a book now. I'm gonna do that. Now, what I've learned is that through reading these different books and you know kind of consuming different new information over the course of my life, that business and money is spiritual just as much as it is a physical like commodity or you know or an asset, right? Business and money is spiritual, right? So how that plays out is going back to us being unhealed and trying to pursue different business ventures and investing. When we come from survival mode, what we end up doing is it ends up showing up as to us that we're lazy, we're not trying to invest in ourselves, we're scared to take risks, we're constantly questioning where we rank in everything, we don't know who to trust when it comes to business, we're more likely to call things a scam, so on and so forth, right? It's because we haven't embedded spirituality into our money practices because we're so unhealed through survival mode, right? And I'm pretty sure that if we just took a step back and really analyzed it, we could find personal examples through either people we know or even in ourselves, right? I'm pretty sure if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, right, if you're the first person in your family who attempted to do something like start a business or whatever, everybody called you crazy. They probably look at you like you were fucking stupid. They probably talked behind your back, whatever else, right? I know for a fact that most of y'all have gone through that. But why is that? It's because when you have generations of survival mode, it's hard for our families or people that are in proximity to us to understand fully what the hell you're doing. They can't see anything past the scraps that they've been given from their 9 to 5. They don't get it, right? They think it's too risky, right? That's just what it is. But is that more about you, or is it more about the traumas that we have had to kind of understand, to kind of work through, right? And this is why I think it's really important that we get to a place of understanding of what this means, and this will also help our mental state throughout it, especially when we talk about like the fact that generational wealth has become like this coin term now. It's damn near like a trend. We're constantly talking about it, and you know we're always using this for the damn word, and so much so that we've kind of diluted what it really means. And how this affects us is we are already unhealed in general. This is why we put so much of our worth into vanity metrics and into money, right? Because we're so unhealed. Now, what this does is when we start talking about words like generational wealth, and we start, you know, consuming so much bullshit online from people who are flashy, showing a bunch of money, showing checks and all these different things, what's happening is it starts to get into our subconscious mind that we are behind, right? And what that does is it knocks us off of our path of creating that generational wealth. Now, first off, this is just my opinion on this. I think that because we have diluted that term so much, we have in our minds convinced ourselves that we as one person is supposed to create the generational wealth for our kids, right? When in reality, we have to establish the foundation for them to carry on mentally before financially. Like, we have skipped what it meant. Like, for one, we have skipped a lot of components for what generational wealth is supposed to be. You know, it's not just about you buying up a bunch of real estate and then leaving it to your children. It's not just about that. It has to be deeper than that, because if we are not becoming the people that we are required to be, or that we're supposed to be, which I would say would be healed, mentally strong, emotionally intelligent people who just happen to be financially literate, that generational wealth will deplete with the next generation, aka your kids, because they would not be able to learn things from you that would have been the foundation for said generational wealth, if that makes sense. So in short, what I'm saying is, if we don't focus on teaching more than we are just doing, we're not going to get any fucking where. And to prove my point, right, I saw some research. I did some research recently on just like the difference between what black wealth was 10 years ago and where it is now, right? And if you really look at these stats, you're probably going to be alarmed. But sit back and really think about this. It's 2025. In the last 10 years, we have more financial literacy coaches, quote unquote, than ever before. We have real estate experts. We have stock, guys. We have all these different influencers. We have seminars. We have all these different things over the last 10, 15 years than any other time. And what I see just off of the data, the improvements in our culture as it pertains to black wealth, it's been minimal at best. Black home ownership is not really up like that. The wealth gap has not been closing like that. In terms of like improved revenue, somewhat, but spending is still very high, so it doesn't really balance out that much. So when I look at these studies, and I see, well, if all we seeing online is fucking generational wealth, why isn't it reflecting in the community? A part of it is because, or at least I believe, it's because we are not building from a state of a healthy mind. So we're looking at things from such a short-term mentality, right? I made a video about this on my Facebook a while ago. Like, we're looking at everything from such a short-term trend hopping perspective, that we're not doing the things that are really building wealth, which is owning our own platforms, intellectual property, long-term syndication, things like that, things that actually move the needle, right? I think that because we've been in survival mode again for generations, we have been content and we are thinking smaller because we don't want the risk, right? So you see how everything connects. I also saw a study by JP Morgan, I think it was in 2021. They said that Black Americans are way less likely to even go after funding because they don't believe that they qualify, even when they do, right? You see how that's a mental barrier, right? And this is JP Morgan, the bank, saying this, right, with the study. So you think about it, that right there is a mental barrier. Now, I'm not saying that the banking system is not messed up. I'm not saying that that there is not a lot of predatory things as it pertains to these different institutions taking advantage of the Black community in many different ways when it comes to banking, loans, financial, whatever. Right? I'm not saying that, but the fact is there are a lot of us who can get approved for funding or financing or different grants, but we don't go after them because of the mental side of things, thinking that we're not, because we are trying to overcompensate for being in survival mode so long. We think we have to work harder to get to a certain spot to then go after the things that we want and need for our businesses, for our investments, for whatever, right? So think about that. All of that goes right back to what I was saying before. We are unhealed, and it's causing blockages in our own wealth, right? So what we see is we see signs that we ignore, right? So here's an example. All right, the unhealed trauma is very expensive, because like I said, when you're unhealed, you work just to be worthy. You spend money that you don't have to escape your emotions. This is where all the Gucci and Balenciaga and all that bullshit that don't appreciate and value and all that shit comes in the hand, because you're seeking validation, right? You think you have to look the part when the part don't exist. The look don't exist, right? So you're chasing validation instead of value. This is where I'm saying we're going after these vanity metrics that don't mean anything, instead of going after things that actually mean something, right? We're building businesses out of like pain instead of purpose, right? And that last one I had to learn firsthand. You know, when I launched Family Full of Hustlers, it was out of a place of anger, really, and pain, right? Now, has it become purposeful over time? Of course. I've helped a lot of people. I've been able to collaborate with other entrepreneurs. You know, even though I've been kind of inconsistent really with the podcasting side of things, that the brand umbrella, I've been able to do a lot of things with that have become purposeful to me, right? But that's not how it necessarily started, you know, or even just this path. So here's some signs that you might be still in survival mode and you might not really necessarily know it, right? So if you are always busy and you never really at peace and like that, you you probably in survival mode still, right? If you are doom scrolling, you can't fucking sit still without grabbing your phone, right? Because you got the fear of missing out. You constantly trying to see what's what, you know, you constantly in the know of everything, you know, you're probably in survival mode, right? And I'm gonna connect all of this, once I get done. If you blow a bag, which we already know this one, you blow a bag as soon as you touch it. Oh yeah, survival mode, for sure, right? You think that you got it because you touched it, right? When you don't got it, all right. You have a hard time at trusting people, even when they mean well. That is a big one. This is why most black entrepreneurs are solopreneurs, right? This is a fact. I forgot what the number was, but yeah, most of us are solopreneurs. And if I remember the data right, most solo businesses don't even last more than like 5 years at all. So that is an alarming thing. Also, businesses that are partnerships or collaborations make a substantial amount of more money than than solopreneurs, right? So why don't we collab? Why don't we do more joint ventures? Why don't we start more companies as a unit? It's because we don't trust out of an unhealed thing, right? From an unhealed perspective, we're still unhealed as it pertains to money and wealth. So we're not there yet, right? And the last one is this individual. I guess this kind of goes into not trusting people, but this individual mindset of like, I got it, when deep down you really tired as hell. You need to outsource. You need to find a mentor. You need to find guidance, but you're putting it all on yourself, right? Because you are afraid of it all crumbling or falling apart again. So you disguise it as ownership, when I don't know if you ever heard the saying, it's better to own 1% of a watermelon than it is to own 100% of a grape, right? We have disguised ownership. We disguise our pain as ownership. And this is how it shows up. It shows up in us not practicing group economics. It shows us not investing in each other's ideas. It shows up in so many different forms. When if you look at the data, group economics is a wealth building hack. Investing into other people's ideas who are in proximity to you is a wealth building hack. Do y'all not see what I'm saying here? All right. So let's talk about the connection between healing wealth a little bit deeper, right? How does it affect your everyday finances, right? It limits your risk tolerance. That's the biggest thing, right? So what ends up happening is, because you're scared to take risk, you stay in bad jobs that you don't fucking like longer than you should, because you're scared to start a business that you have the expertise and talent to do, because you're afraid of the risk, right? Now, the other thing that it does as it relates to affecting your finances is it distorts your relationship with money. We think that spending means freedom, and that's not fucking true, right? And that what that does is it affects our discipline, and it starts this cycle of living check to check, invoice to invoice, over and over and over again. If you look at even more data, you'll see that you see this all the time. No matter what tax bracket, especially in the black community, most of us are still living from deal to deal, paycheck to paycheck, invoice to invoice, no matter how much money we make, because every time we make more money, we spend more money, so we're in the same ratio, right? If you upgrade your life and you make $50,000 a year at your job, you make 150 or 200K as an entrepreneur, but then you spend all of the excess money that you've made on everything but your business, you're still in the same position. You just think that you are at a higher position because you made more money. That's an invisible tax in itself, because your relationship with money is distorted, right? The other thing that it does as it relates to affecting your finances, it affects your leadership, right? You cannot lead people if you don't know how to handle your emotions with money, right? Again, this goes back to the fact that most black entrepreneurs are solopreneurs, right? So what this does is it makes us harder to have employees. We have a really strained relationship with money. So how the hell are we going to build a team of people that we have to pay, right? So we're probably going to be more likely to try to pay them less than they're worth, because we want to have this "it's all mine, gimme, gimme, gimme" mentality, because we are still rooted in survival mode, right? And one of the most important things, and one of the ways that it affects us the most, is it keeps us reactive, right? Our poor relationship with money keeps us reactive, right? We make decisions based off of emotional decisions, and I always tell people all the time, money and your emotions don't fucking mix, right? Money don't move on emotions. It moves off of your systems. All right. So us having a strained relationship with money keeps us in a reactive state of mind. So we're doing things based off of how we feel versus the facts. All right. And this is why I say that going through your journey to heal these different things is not necessarily about self-care. It's about strategy, really. That's what it's about. It's a strategy. The more healed you are, the clearer your vision will be, the better your relationships will be, the stronger your moves will be, the more peace you'll feel when you're building something that matters. All right. So now let me go back to that. I'm gonna say that again. The more healed you are, the clearer your vision will be. You will not be doing things that does not align with who you are and what you care about. You will have a better way of understanding what you are here to do, what you love to do. And I don't know about y'all, but y'all have ever had this feeling that, like, let's say if you work a 9 to 5, you ever realize that if you work a 9 to 5, right, and you hate your job, how tired you are? You tired as hell at the end of your day, right? Now, imagine you had a job that you loved. You probably work overtime. You know what I mean? You spend the extra time in the in the lunch room. You know what I mean? The break room. I mean, whatever. You feel me? You got friends at work. You enjoy it more. Though that same thing applies to business, right? When you are in a state of dreading what you do because your vision isn't clear, oh, you exhausted. You want to fuck out. You less productive. You try to do any and everything to escape the work that needs to be done because it feels like fucking work instead of you just being. And that's because you are unhealed. You don't have a clear vision, right? Now, going back to relationships part, right? the more healed you are, the better your relationships are as it pertains to business partnerships, collaborative efforts, um, hiring employees, mentorships, in whatever angle, right? When you have a healthier approach to what relationship building means, it makes your business an actual business and not a mid to high paying self-employed position. Right? It's a big difference between those two. You know, if you sit back and you look at other people who you would call successful in any industry across the world, you'll notice that the biggest companies, the companies that have been around the longest, they have teams, they have systems, they have processes to where the owner, he does a lot, but he doesn't do it all. He doesn't do much as you when you compare it to how the entire company operates, right? Think about somebody like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not in the damn factory building the damn Tesla himself. You know, he has a team. He's not necessarily doing all the marketing. He has a team. You know, sales. He has a team. Everything is team based, right? Amazon, same thing. Even if you go at a smaller level, to people who are in our own community, you look at people who are in the sports world, entertainment. I know that's, you know, what people identify with a lot. They have teams, right? Everybody has a team, and if you struggle with relationships, the chances of you growing an actual business that creates any type of wealth is slim to none. You're not going to build an empire just by your damn self. That's just not going to happen. You know, I could be wrong, but I'm just saying, just off of the data and my experience of building different things, there's no way you're going to build something sustainable solely by yourself, right? You're going to need a staff. You're going to need partnerships. You're going to need help. You're going to need guidance. You're going to need it all right? So think about that. And the other thing I'm going to end off with that is, like I said, the more peace you feel when you build something that matters, when you are at peace with what you're doing, you are less likely to have the shiny object syndrome, which a lot of us have. We start looking at what other people doing, seeing that they might be making some paper, that we think it's going to be easy. We start trying to do that and what we're already doing. Next thing you know, we're unfocused, and all of these are reflections of us being unhealed. We're trying to do any and everything to do what? To survive. All of that goes back to survival mode, right? And even when we're making money, we don't even realize that we're still in that same mode. So prioritizing healing before anything is a wealth strategy. So how do you start? All right. You don't have to go live in the woods. I ain't saying you gotta do all that. I ain't saying you gotta drop everything and quit and have an existential crisis and, you know, and burn sage on the mountain or some shit. I'm just saying you have to start with honesty, right? Maybe if that looks like picking up a journal and just asking yourself, what are you avoiding? Writing all those things down, getting in the habit of being in silence, sitting with yourself, you know, finding a therapist, you know, I got some I can refer you to, you know, a coach, you know, maybe somebody in your community, a pastor, whatever, you know, a real friend who just lets you get it out, you know, and maybe y'all can help each other, right? For me, it's been more so moving my body, being in a gym. Yoga played a lot of part in it. Now I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting, things like that. And I think the most important thing is forgiving yourself for what you didn't know. A lot of us didn't know that we were unhealed, so we were doing things that we probably shouldn't have been doing, and we just didn't know, right? That we thought we were just getting money. We thought we were just partying up, living. We thought we was on the right path, and we weren't, and that's okay, right? But we have to forgive ourselves for not knowing what we didn't know, right? This is a part of the growth process, all right? So, and we have to give ourselves permission to feel the emotion, all right? We go through growing pains through all of this, and we have to understand that, all right? Because every dollar you earn while you're unhealed, you're going to find a way to sabotage it. I'm telling you. You're going to sabotage your own fucking money because you are unhealed. So, just start there. All right? So, if you got nothing else from this episode, I want you to hear me loud and clear. Bro, you not lazy or none of that. You not broken. Ain't nothing wrong with you. You just carrying a lot of shit. You carrying a lot of pain, and you've disguised it as like a personality. Right? You are worthy of building something without being in this survival mode. So before you build a business, before you go out there and try to get that bag, before you post how much money you making, all that shit, bro, check your soul. Make sure that your spirit is high. Your vibrations are good. Your vibrations high, right? Legacy starts with inner peace above anything. And this is what if you have children, what you would want your kids to know. Anyway, I appreciate y'all tapping in with me. If this hit you, send it to somebody you love. Don't gatekeep healing. This is the Family Full Hustlers podcast, and I pray that you all win. Until the next time, I'm out.